Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city sand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on our channels and on X. And what a night it was at Citi Field. Cold, rainy, and a comeback win from our boys in gray. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Welcome to the show, guys. It was a very interesting game yesterday as the Mets couldn't get anything going. But Jesse Winker found his offense, and of course, the leader of this team, Francisco Lindor, gets the game-winning hit. Chris, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm ready to get a sweep, to be honest with you. First sweep of the season would be absolutely ideal in this ball game, this matinee matchup on Sunday. Yesterday, the post-game chat was alive and well and popping, and I appreciate everybody for, coming out and talking about an electric Mets victory, a walk-off victory for the New York Mets, the first one of the season. My eyes are burning up. The allergies, it's allergy season, and I'm just struggling over here. So hopefully you all are doing a little bit better than me in terms of the actual health. But no, it's good to be here. Sunday, again, David Peterson's on the bump. We'll talk about the matchup. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about from yesterday, and really was the Jesse Winker show through and through, with 3 extra base hits in the ball game, and he came through and delivered that very big 2 RBI triple to tie up the ball game in the later stages of the ball game. And I honestly thought that ball was gone off of the bat, but it was a cold night and the ball wasn't really carrying. But he just got enough of it to hit it off the fence for 2 RBIs. So I like the way this Mets team is playing. Of course, we'd rather see the bats get going a little bit earlier, but can't complain after last night.
Over the last couple of nights, they've gotten the hits when they needed them. I mean, that's been the difference, in important moments. We have left a lot of Mets left on base. I think it was 10 men left on base yesterday again, but eventually they came through. And again, good teams find a way to win ball games even when you're not doing everything perfect. And that's exactly, the offense is not great right now. I mean, I think we all can agree with that, but they're finding ways to win. And that's signs of a good team to a great team. And that's without, Nimmo doing anything, without Juan Soto doing everything. Lindor's starting to hit a little bit, which is a great sign in early April. And Pete Alonso, didn't have a great night yesterday, but again, still been red hot. So it again, you need 1 or 2 of those guys at the very top to do what they've been doing. And then while the others are cold, and then hopefully they either come together and get hot at the same time, or they switch. As long as somebody's hot at some point in time, it's going to help this team win. And then Ken brought it up in the chat, the dominating pitching. Griffin Cannon wasn't great. He did have, 6 strikeouts in the ball game. Didn't get through the 5th inning. But what about you, Oscar Brazaman? He's one of those guys that should be the co-star of the game with Jesse Winker, because he came in after Griffin Cannon and took care of business. He kept this team in the ball game to make that Jesse Winker comeback and hits and offense happen, and then eventually led to the game-winning hit with Francisco Lindor. Thank God, swinging that first pitch, because he was waiting for that pitch. But, Chris, it's not talked about enough. Everybody was talking about Winker, everybody was talking about Lindor. A couple of people talked about Brazaban on Twitter, but he was key for keeping this game close enough at 2-0 to give the Mets a chance to come back late in the ball game, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was talking about Huascar Braziban 100 and 110%. I mean, how can you not with how he has started off this season? I mean, he's been absolutely electric. I think it was a pretty good job from Jose Buto to actually relieve Griffin Canning and get that,
Yep.
out of that fifth inning, a little bit unscathed. There was kind of a tricky situation with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. coming up to the plate, first and second, nobody out. Griffin Canning just simply could not get into the later stages of the ball game. He produces a pretty good outing. I think that Jose Buto contributed to that in terms of the final stat line. But yeah, like you said, Huascar Brazaban is not being talked about enough amongst this Mets fan base. And I think that, again, if he's coming in and doing this while pitching, 2/3 innings pitched, and closing out an inning for the starter, or coming in and pitching a scoreless inning, okay. But he is providing on multiple occasions, multiple scoreless innings for the New York Mets. We're not talking about one inning. We're not talking about 2/3 of an inning. We're talking about 2+ innings pitched out of Oscar Brazaban, a handful of times already. And when you have him, a guy of his caliber, a guy that has the stuff that he does, that is on in this bullpen, and you couple that, let's say, with an AJ Minter that is still trying to really hit his full stride. Daniel Nunez is going to be coming back soon. Edwin Diaz, who we also saw in the ninth inning last night as well, if he's on the top of his game, this bullpen is going to be a very scary sight, because at his ceiling, at his absolute maximum potential, Huascar Brazaban can also be a very viable option for the seventh inning, potentially even the eighth inning, if the other guys are not available. Let's say in certain situations, right? And Carlos Mendoza, is going to have to start thinking about maybe giving him an increase of leverage, right, in a type of role. But for right now, obviously that's going to be a future conversation. For right now, he has been contributing in the most perfect fashion with the role that he's been assigned, and he's been coming through. So I agree with you 100%. I gave Jesse Winker my player of the game from last night, but I think Huascar Brazaban also deserves some consideration as well.
Yeah, last year we couldn't even trust him with 2 batters, let alone 2 innings. And look, another guy, like, I don't think anybody penciled in Brazaban being a multi-inning guy and being good at that. I know you've been a big fan of his, but I don't even think you could expected 2 innings or multiple innings from a Brazaban and actually pitching well, combined. But at the same time, that's another multi-inning guy in this bullpen with Reed Garrett, you got Buto, you got Brazaban. I mean, it's just outstanding the amount of multi-inning guys that you have. And listen, it does help. Now, I think at some point these starters have to go a little bit deeper just to give our bullpen a chance. You can't go to the 5th inning, or the middle of the 4th inning and continue to use the bullpen and expect them to be great, for the entire year. They're going to break down at some point. But with the multi-inning guys that you have, it does kind of help you not use 5 guys in a game, because you can use 2 guys to do 2 innings, and that kind of controls the rest of the game. But at the same time, you also got to be careful as well, because the starters got to go a little bit further. It would be nice. Again, it was a cold night, rainy night, weird night in New York. I mean, not really weird, but it was just a nasty night and not easy for the pitchers, even though Bassett kind of shut down the Mets. Once again, it's amazing. Like, the guy throws so much junk up there. He threw a 69 miles an hour curveball, and he's just doing his thing. And we seen it when he was a Met. He was great the year that we had him, except the last 2 starts of his Mets tenure. But they found a way to win. And this is when the Mets were starting to get good last year. They started to find ways to win. Even if they couldn't hit the starter, we all knew they would get to the team's bullpen, regardless of who we were playing. And they did it again last night. And that's what they got to keep on doing, Chris. They're not running on all cylinders right now. And this is a great sign. This is absolutely a great sign. We have a chance to sweep the Blue Jays today. They were 5-2 coming into Citi Field. They were playing well. And the Mets have basically shut them down. Once again, 3 runs or less. Like, it's just what they've been doing. And I like that overall the pitching has been carrying this team for the most part. And when they needed the big hits, they've gotten them for the most part, especially late in the games recently. And they got to continue to do that. And they got a big opportunity today with David Peterson on the mound. And you know what? David Peterson has been good. He looks really good in his first start. I think he's going to pitch really well again. And I think he can really control this Blue Jays lineup, Chris.
Yeah, and I think that before I get into today's matchup and before we do, I think that we had to give a big shout out to Carlos Mendoza as well. Sticking and trusting his gut. And I didn't say this in the post game yesterday because I didn't get a chance to simultaneously listen into the questions that Carlos Mendoza was answering, but he was, I guess asked about the decision to leave Jesse Winker in the ball game facing the lefty versus going to Tyrone Taylor. And he essentially said that you take a look at, Jesse Winker in his first, couple of at-bats of the ball game. He's locked in. He's off to a little bit of a slow start this season, but he's locked in that particular ball game, knowing that they also have the righty warming up in case the Mets make that move to bring in Tyrone Taylor. And Mendoza knows that. And he was also watching, the at-bat from Juan Soto in terms of the other lefty that came before Jesse Winker. Same thing with Brandon Nimmo, who just absolutely roped the baseball right at the center fielder. It was a deep shot, and unfortunately, it was just right at the center fielder. And watching those at-bats from the lefties and Juan Soto and Brandon Nimmo versus their lefty, it kind of just made the decision easy for him, essentially what he said, in terms of sticking with Jesse Winker instead of making the move for Tyrone Taylor. So I think that needs to be talked about a lot because the analytics, it's an analytics versus gut feeling type of situation right there. And understanding that they're going to make the residual move to bring in the righty versus the righty if Carlos Mendoza makes the move. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to stick with Jesse Winker and hopefully he gets, a base hit and makes me look good. And guess what Jesse Winker did? He did just that.
And I think pitch hitting Marte, Senga for Marte, Marte for Senga, excuse me, earlier in the game, and Marte had not a very bad at bat. I think Mendoza was like, why put a cold guy that's been on the bench while Winker is warmed up, ready to go, seen a couple of at bats already. And I think that was another reason why when he saw Marte's at bat, he's like, do I want to bring in a cold player off the bench, regardless if I think he's better against lefties or not? I'd rather keep the guy that's been in there all game, been warmed up. And I wonder if that was a decision where Mendoza probably was like, I like that Marte decision. I think most people were like, okay, you got to pinch it for Sanger in that spot, to be quite honest with you. It was an important moment of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if Marte was on the bench, he probably would have hit for Winker later in the ballgame, but the opportunity wasn't there. You could have put Tyrone Taylor in, but again, I don't think he wanted to do that at that point because of the weather and the way Marte looked at the plate and didn't want to put a cold guy at the plate. So it worked out in our favor. And look, Mendoza looks like a genius for not making that move, right? If Winker would have struck out, we probably would have been like, you got to pinch it for him in that spot. But again, it's not all about matchups. How many times have we said this, Chris? People hate when we say it, and it's just annoying to say it over and over again. But 8 games into the season, it hasn't been all about matchups. It's been about the hot hand, about the gut feeling. And I love this about Mendoza, that he has this gut feeling and he goes to it. And it's not about matchups anymore. It's about either the hot hand or the gut feeling. And of course, analytics going to put a play in, have a play in it. And of course, matchups. But I like what Mendoza is doing. And somebody brought it up in the chat. I can't remember who it says. I'm trying to find it. But they said, with Mendoza, he's had one bad game, and that was in Houston. And he learned from that mistake already. And that's what I like to see, because bullpen management was a little bit of, I would say, I would give it like a B- for Mendoza last year when he was really good with everything else. He had trouble managing bullpens and taking guys out at certain times and leaving starters in or taking them out too early to bring in a bullpen that wasn't very good. He's learning from his mistakes, and that's a sign of a really good to great manager. And I'm happy he's a New York Mets manager. I tell you that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we saw a lot of it last season, and we're starting to see it this season as well, why he is one of the better managers in the game and having situational awareness and kind of going against the book, so to speak, on certain occasions. Sometimes it's going to come back to haunt them, and people will be talking about it then. But, on a lot of occasions, the Mets have greatly benefited from it. So shout out to the chat as well. Ethan, have fun at the game. I see that you're at the game right now. Hopefully the weather holds up as well. And what CD is saying here in the chat as well is so very valid. It's good to see the Mets have the same identity they had last year. You never know from year to year, but they're still the comeback kids. And Ryan Stanek was asked about that as well in terms of the actual vibe around the New York Mets. It's not the same team. It's not the same clubhouse. They can never replicate that vibe, said Ryan Stanek, right? There's no grimace. There's no, OMG. There's none of the gimmicks, right? But, he also said that this organization, like, there's so much that has changed, whether you're a New York Mets player currently or of the past. There's so much that's changed within this organization from top to bottom, is that at this point, you can say, I get it, it's only 8 games into the season, but they're trying to create a team that doesn't need the gimmicks. They're just a tight-knit clubhouse, and they're just going to go out there and perform. So replicating, the confidence and the success from last year, even without the gimmicks, is something that I'm very, much looking forward to see out of the New York Mets. And again, Francisco Lindor also said it from yesterday, they are never out of the ball game.
Yep.
How many times did we see the New York Mets come from behind last season? It seems like no matter what they did against the starting pitcher, whether they had success or whether they're getting no hit, as we'll talk about here with Bowden Francis, who's going for the Toronto Blue Jays again against the Mets in this game, carrying a no-hitter into the 9th inning. Francisco Lindor comes up in a 1-0 ball game, evens the ball game in his first at-bat, leading off that inning, and boom, it's a brand new ball game. So, the toughness, the grinding out of at-bats is, such a nightmare for opposing bullpens. And I guess the Mets bullpen guys and Ryan Stanek are just happy that they don't have to face the Mets lineup when it comes time for them to come into the game.
Yeah, gimmicks are a thing when your team's not very good. When your team's not very good or they're going through a low, that's when gimmicks are needed. OMG, grimace, Huck Tua, anybody else, Seymour Wiener on opening day throwing out the first pitch. Like, there was everything that we can get to have a gimmick last year. And it's because there was no expectations. This team wasn't good for 2 months out of the season, and then they turned it on. For whatever reason, you could say that they were a very good team, that it was the gimmicks, whatever it was, something clicked in their heads and everything just took off. When you're a good team, when you have high expectations, you don't need gimmicks to win. You can be good enough to do what you need to do during the season to get yourself to the playoffs. And the playoffs are a crapshoot, as we all know. So this team's good enough without the gimmicks, right? You saw they kept on zooming in on Vientos's cleats. That was grimace with the purple and all that stuff. And, it's not a big deal, but, they were talking about it on the broadcast. But we don't need gimmicks. We're good. We're really damn good. And again, we came into this opening series at home against a well-playing Blue Jays team. They haven't hit a lot of home runs, but you could see they're a contact-hitting team, and they put pressure on you. They don't make it easy, and they were playing well. And the Mets basically shut them down for 2 games, and now they're going for the sweep today. And, with Bowden Francis, I want to see the Mets make adjustments. I know it's not the same team as last year, but they looked lost the last time they faced them. And you know what? It was a perfect storm. Bowden Francis had every pitch. He was just working. Sometimes the pitcher just has it and you tip your cap, but there's got to be adjustments here. I think last time, I don't remember the complete game exactly, but I think it was around that time when the Mets were taking way too many fastballs down the middle, and they were swinging at all that junk that Francis was throwing. And you did say right before we came on live that he does have a splitter, and that's the Mets' old favorite pitch. So I'm gonna let you take it on Francis, by the way, because I know you were looking at the pitches before we went live here. Give a little take on Francis. The last time we seen him, he almost pitched a no-hitter.
Yeah, and he's a very tough pitcher to figure out, but he primarily works with only 3 pitches, but he just makes the most of those 3 pitches, which makes him very effective. Has 4-seam fastball. The splitter is his secondary pitch, and then he'll throw a curveball as well, to keep hitters honest. So, again, you're taking a look at a vastly different pitcher than you saw last night with Chris Bassett having 6 to 7 different pitches. Now you have a guy that has had success against some of your guys in the lineup last season, but only throws 3 pitches. And again, when we talk about opposing pitchers that have the split finger fastballs, it just seems to be always the New York Mets kryptonite pitch. And it's not because, opposing pitchers are locating it very perfectly, right? For strikes in the zone, they're usually would be strikes that look like strikes until they drop out of the zone underneath, or I guess I should say, underneath the New York Mets bats, right? Into the dirt. And that's something that I think that if the Mets can figure out, right? One, you have to hope with the cold weather, he can't get as good of a grip on the baseball. Now, it's going to be a very similar story with David Peterson because it's an even playing field here. And we're not playing indoors, but you have to hope at least that the weather could affect Bowden Francis's ability to get a grip on the baseball to be effective with that splitter. But if he is effective with the splitter early and often, at that point, you're going to have to identify it. You're going to have to maybe look if he's not really, masking the counts in which he likes to use the splitter, then you're going to have to just identify it and just lay off of it because it's not a pitch that's going to be successful even if you do put it in play for the lineup, right? If you make contact with that splitter, that's exactly what Bowden Francis wants. He wants you to swing at it first and foremost, and he wants you to make contact because especially if there's runners on the bases, more likely than not, you're going to ground out or ground into a double play. And that's just the nature of that pitch, and it's pretty consistent across all pitchers that throw that splitter. So laying off that pitch and being very selective is going to be the Mets' best chance at putting together competitive at-bats. Keep the line moving. You saw it last night. Brett Beatty in the last inning got out, first out. Jose Siri took 2 walks. That's very uncharacteristic of Jose Siri, right? And the one thing that I talked about in terms of him making an impact at the bottom of the lineup to start the season was being a little bit more selective, taking those walks when they were given to him. And guess what? He is able to help manufacture a run and get in scoring position for the top of the lineup and Francisco Lindor to do his thing with the walk-off sacrifice fly. So laying off of those very tough pitches, and if you get a fastball to hit, he's not throwing, very hard. Bowden Francis is averaging between 92 to 93, maybe 94 tops miles per hour on the fastball. Maybe the cold weather mixed in between there. He's 92 to 93. That's perfect velocity for major league hitters to hit and handle, right? So I really do think that he's going to be overutilizing, given the conditions, maybe throwing a lot more of the splitter, a lot more of the curveball as his tertiary pitch than he would normally. But you gotta expect that he's going to rely at the very minimum on that splitter more often than not. And that's lay off. So the recipe for success here, just to summarize it all, I know I'm talking a lot here. Lay off the splitter. It's going to be a ball more often than not. Guys that throw splitters usually don't locate it in the zone. It's kind of like a trickery pitch with the ghost fork, especially with Kodai Senga, kind of mimics that, and attack the fastball. If you get a fastball, I don't care if it's first pitch, Rob. This is exactly why I was so happy to see Francisco Lindor going up there with the game plan last night. New pitcher. He knows that the pitcher's in a tough situation. He's going to want to get ahead in that count to put himself in the best position possible to strike out Francisco Lindor before he has to get to Juan Soto, who's batting right behind him. And Lindor knows that. So what does he anticipate the first pitch being? A fastball, and he gets the job done. The Mets hitters, I really do think, and I understand that it's hit or miss, and if they end up not being successful with this approach, Bowden Francis is going to have a very long outing, right, in terms of not working counts. But I really do think that, especially looking at that, start with Bowden Francis against the Mets last season, if you get a fastball, if I'm Carlos Mendoza or if I'm Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, I don't care who it is, assigned to talk hitting with the lineup, I'm saying if you get a fastball first pitch, please don't be afraid to swing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here, especially on nasty days and cold days, rainy days, as today's going to be. you got to jump on a pitch early, right? He's trying to get off that mound as quickly as possible. What do you think he's going to throw? He's going to try to get ahead in the count, and that's when you got to jump on a pitch. And Lindor did that yesterday. And yeah, kudos to Jose Siri taking those 2 walks. It's obviously he doesn't do that often. He usually, swings at everything and is the guy that's a power or nothing. But it was nice to see him be selective there. And look, his job was to try to get this bottom of the order to flip over to the top of the order, and that he did a great job of doing that, along with Senga, along with Luis Torrens as well.
Torrens, what a tough guy, man! What a tough guy.
He has that forearm contusion, and that's why he's not playing again today. Starting today, he did play yesterday, but starting again today, which is fine. Again, Senga did a good job yesterday. He'll probably do a good job today. He's a very good defensive catcher. He has a little bit of pop in his bat. If there's a situation where you need a pinch hit appearance and Senga's at the plate, Luis Torrens is going to hit. We saw that yesterday. There was a situation where Mendoza had nobody else to go to. So he needed to go to Luis Torrens because he needed to pitch hit for Senga in that spot for with Marte. So he needed Torrens, and Torrens, who probably wasn't feeling great, the team needed him. His manager needed him, and he stepped up. That's the difference between being injured and being hurt. Luis Torrens was hurt, and he was able to come in, still get a hit off the end of the bat, get the job done, and play solid defense behind the plate for a couple of innings. So once again, Luis Torrens makes an impact on a game he didn't even start, and I wouldn't be shocked if you see him in later today. I think Mendoza would love to stay away from Luis Torrens, just to give him a break, because you got to take care of that forearm. You don't have a lot of days off at all. I think we play like 12, 13 straight days. So there's no days off here. So you're going to need your backup catcher. And hopefully the Mets jump out to a nice lead where you don't have to worry about Luis Torrens being in this ball game. Give him a day off and let Senga, catch for 9 innings. And hopefully that happens, Chris.
One thing that I also want to point out in terms of yesterday's ball game, and I talked about it on the post-game stream. If you missed it, make sure to go check it out on my channel. Pete Alonso. He played some great defense in that ball game too. I mean, I know he took the 0 with 3 strikeouts. I get all that, but he's been pretty great with the bat so far early in this season. And it's like the defense doesn't drop off and hasn't dropped off as of yet. And again, you see him make a great stretch to complete the double play that Vientos and Beatty turned, and also the diving stop when Huascar Brazaban was on the mound for a little bit of a PFP to get the put out at first base. I love the way that this team is playing defense, and I just never want to see a replication of what happened in Game 3 in Miami. Even though they escaped with a win, over there to get the series win, I never want to see that type of defensive performance. And I think that, the defense really stepped it up. They're playing at a different level. And I think that that's largely due to Pete Alonso. The throws to second base have been on point. He just looks very locked in on both sides of the ball, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, his defense has been impeccable. And it's not about just a glove, because he can get to the ball, right? If he can get to it, he'll get to it. You still concern yourself with the throws, but he's been on point with his throws this year. And, he probably worked on it because Pete Alonso's a hard worker. We all know that. He's gotten better defensively basically every year. His throws was the problem last year. Gary Cohen brought it up on the play that he made that nice play and thrown it to first base, where it was just lead the pitcher right to the base. And that's exactly what he did. And he had problems with that last year a lot. And that was a huge concern. And Gary Cohen brought that up on the broadcast last night, that it was a huge concern. Nobody knew what it was, why the reason was. And it's not like he wasn't, he isn't capable. He is capable. I think it was just focus and a little bit more harder work. And again, Pete Alonso puts in the work, and nice to see that he's getting those throws, leading the guys to bags. I think he made one throw so far where he had to turn a double play. They didn't get the double play, but he was able to throw the ball to second on a long throw, straight throw, perfect throw. And that's what I want to see from Pete Alonso as well, because the throws were the problem, not the glove. It was the throws. And right now, over the first 8 games, he's looked damn good. And you know what? He's locked in, like you said, Chris, absolutely locked in. And listen, when you're looking for a big time payday and a long-term contract, you better be locked in, because if you have another year like last year, nobody's going to give you a long-term deal. And they're not even going to look a second thought, and you might get another 1-year deal. So Pete Alonso, for the first 8 games, looking good. I do want to see, and this goes for every player, not just for Pete Alonso, every player. I want to see when that first slump happens and he, offensively is not doing well, where's his mindset, right? Where does he start going? Does he start getting away from what made him good in the first couple of games of the season, or does he get unhinged? That's what I want to see. And that goes for every player, right? Right now, Juan Soto's going through it, right? Gary Cohen was talking about Juan Soto being Keith Hernandez talked about him not being balanced at the plate. That is rare for Juan Soto. And again, he is human. I know he's the $800 million man, but he is human. Juan Soto's going to figure it out. We all know that. He's always done that. Brandon Nimmo, the same thing. Brandon Nimmo hit a line drive to center field. I mean, he hit a shot yesterday, but he's a little bit off. And then Vientos finally got a hit. He is second hit of the year, but he's another one. We got to see some. Yeah, exactly. It was nice to see. But at the same time, I want to see a lot of these guys get off the stride when they're struggling. And we saw the problem with Pete Alonso last year, even Brandon Nimmo. And, we didn't see Vientos. Vientos basically was red hot for the entire season when Cincy came up. But you just want to see it. But I want to see better at-bats from Juan Soto, even though he did get that hit later in the ball game that went up the middle. He got jammed, but was strong enough to get it through the hole. And that's always a sign of a great hitter, right? When you're struggling, you still find a way, and that's what I want to see from the guys that are struggling and to bounce out of it, Chris. Because I mean, at one point, I want to see this team in like full bone, like this craziness, and just everybody's clicking at the same time. That would be awesome.
And I think that that will happen as the weather starts to warm up as well. There is some merit to that. I mean, like Winker's baseball would have left the yard for the lead in yesterday's ball game. Brandon Nimmo's might have gotten over the center fielder's head. That's how hard he hit the baseball, but the weather just simply isn't conducive to carrying in that type of environment. And I think that it's kind of a blessing in disguise for Mark Vientos to be going through these early season struggles, because I think that there's only one way, there's only one direction that he can go in, and that's up. I don't think it can get any worse for Mark Vientos with the way that he started off at the plate. Now, I could be eating my words, so I'm going to just knock on some wood over here to make sure I'm not jinxing him. But I really do think that he's going to, hit his stride. Him in the sixth spot is something that, I guess we really didn't see often, last season, especially in the later months. But I don't have any worries about this lineup. I said it after the first series. I'm gonna say it after every series until we get into like May or June. And if then at that point they're still not hitting, then I'm gonna be worried. But you've seen Francisco Lindor. I know the numbers aren't great at face value, but he's slowly starting to put together competitive at bats. He started the game off with an extra base hit again, his second of this series, and he got the walk off, victory with the sacrifice fly. So I think that this lineup is putting together more competitive at bats. The results haven't showed, I guess, by and large thus far in terms of the numbers. But I think that especially with the top six and what we're talking about here, they're definitely going to be due. Now, second base is anybody's guess, right? Brett Beatty also had a nice little 0-2 count hit. He struck out multiple times looking yesterday. I think that Jeff McNeil, as a lot of Mets fans don't like Jeff McNeil or want to see other guys at second base. I think that this team, if Jeff McNeil can come in and produce just even mediocrely, if that's even a word, just like on a mediocre level, I think that will just pay the Mets bottom of the lineup dividends, because they just simply aren't getting enough out of the bottom of the lineup so far. And again, as you always say, Rob, we're not supposed to be talking about the bottom of the lineup if the top of the lineup does their jobs, which is 100% accurate. But in order to get a little bit of a more well-rounded, balanced lineup, I think that McNeil coming back will definitely pay the Mets some dividends if he's able to at least just produce average numbers. We're not even talking about Jeff McNeil at his peak anymore. And so but in the totality of what we see on this screen, I am not shocked at all that we see the exact same lineup that Carlos Mendoza threw out yesterday, also going with the same lineup today. I'm not shocked.
Yeah, you just read my mind. That was going to be my next talking point. Excuse me, my next talking point when it comes to the lineup. Like, I know you posted it on X. about the lineup, and I'm not shocked either. You just won a ball game. That they had a lot of the lineup had really good at bats yesterday. Again, the weather had a lot to do with it, and the ball wasn't jumping at all. There was at least 2 or 3 balls that either would have went over the outfielder's head or over the wall, and we could have been talking about a blowout game, to be quite honest with you, because the Mets should have scored about 6 or 7 runs in this ball game. But again, the weather dictates a lot in the Northeast, and that's what you just have to deal with. But I like the same lineup again. I know people don't, Brett Baty got a hit yesterday. I know it wasn't a lot of impressive at-bats, but you know what? He got a hit, showed a little bit of life, and I do like Carlos Mendoza giving him that little bit of confidence, saying, hey, you put up better at-bat yesterday. You got that hit on 0-2. Take that confidence into today. I like that he's doing that. And I don't think it's because of the righty on there, because you could easily put Acuna in there today. But again, somebody's got to take the reins at second base. Now, Brett Baty, it has a very short leash, because when Jeff McNeil comes back, I'd be shocked if Acuna is the one that goes back down to the minors, because you're just replacing a left-hander with a left-hander when it comes to Baty and McNeil. And I wish I would have put this poll up, and I should have done it. I didn't think of it at the time. It takes Brett Baty from Met fans to want Jeff McNeil back. That's the funny thing. Like, if I said, who do you want on this roster, Jeff McNeil or Brett Baty, Jeff McNeil will win by a landslide. And again, that's just because Brett Baty's been basically almost non-existent. I'm not saying Acuna has been, looking that much better, especially at the plate. I don't, the defense, I think both have been fine. Acuna had that one error on opening day. Other than that, they've both been fine. Nobody's going to complain about either one's defense. We all know Acuna is better defensively, but at some point, somebody's got to step up with the bat. And it's going to be very interesting, Chris. If Brett Baty does start to hit a little bit, I'm not saying a lot, but look like an actual baseball player, a professional baseball player, will they still send down Brett Baty when Jeff McNeil comes back? Because if Acuna is not hitting and Brett Baty is, I mean, it's going to have – it's not much of an argument. Like, you can't put down the guy that's finally starting to hit. And that goes for Acuna too.
Well, Brett Baty's not going to start consistently hitting until he gets himself into hitters counts, which he has failed to do. Even on the base hit yesterday, it was an 0-2 pitch. And he just is not – something's not triggering in his mind that I'm getting fastballs down the middle. Let me just, not down the middle, but like on the outer third of the plate, let me just go with the pitch. And so I think that once he starts to understand that, and hopefully he does before it's too late, then yeah, I still do think that, and I've always said this, that he has a little bit of an advantage over Luis Angel Acuna in terms of remaining on the roster, even though you could just replace the lefty with the lefty. But I will say, if he doesn't start hitting, then the decision is very easy. Give me the better defensive guy, give me the more versatile guy, and give me the speed with Luis Angel Acuna over Brett Baty, and we can make things work. So it's going to be a tough decision. McNeil, we said it, even if, honestly, if one of these guys was hitting consistently, I still think McNeil would be the starting second baseman no matter what. I think that we both agreed to that weeks ago. But the Mets are going to have a tough decision if both of these guys continue to struggle at the plate, who they're going to prioritize in terms of sending down in favor of McNeil, who's already taking ground balls before the game. We've been seeing that. I think he's also taking some live batting practice, not live batting practice, but just batting practice on the field, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to double check that, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. It's kind of like, what do you want to prioritize between the two skill sets? And also, do the Mets view Brett Baty as not a quote unquote prospect that they're trying to develop anymore? And if they view him as a non-prospect, right? Clearly, Luis Angel Acuna is still a prospect. He still needs development to, hit his peak at the major league level, which would give them incentive based off of the definition of that to send him back down to AAA to get his at-bats and regular starts, like we said from the start, right? And whereas Brett Baty, they're like, okay, listen, we've seen Brett Baty too many times in AAA. There's nothing, I mean, literally nothing that we want to see out of him in AAA anymore. It's going to be in the major leagues until we can find a role for him or another team for him, and that's that. And I think that all of that tandem working together would potentially give Brett Beatty, by default, the advantage over Luis Angel Acuna.
Well, that's a great point. That's why I think, regardless of what Beatty does, to be quite honest with you, I think Acuna is going back to the minors. I still don't think they like his attitude, his lackadaisicalness. I don't think they like his at bats at all, to be quite honest with you. And it's not like Beatty has been any better, but and that's your exact point. I don't think this platoon benefits either one of these players. I just don't think it does. These two guys are used to playing every day, used to getting 4 at bats every day, and they're not getting that. Right now they should be having between 30 around 30 at bats or so at this moment. And what do they each have, like 15, 16 at bats apiece? I don't see how that benefits anybody. If you're trying to develop Luis Angel Acuna, you can't do that while sitting in back-to-back games. I don't think that works. We're using him for defense more than we're using him for at the plate. So what's the point of him? That's not developing anybody at all. Like, you need him to get at bat. And same thing with Brett Beatty. I don't think it helps either of these guys. Even though I think Luis Angel Acuna is going to be the better player, I don't think it benefits these guys. That's why the Jeff McNeil injury was kind of quote-unquote a blessing in disguise to get these both guys on the roster. But I think it hurts them overall because they're not playing every day. And that's what concerns me with Luis Angel Acuna, because, again, we already know that he's been lackadaisical. There's been quotes from Lindor and others probably that they don't like his attitude. They don't like his lackadaisicalness. There's a lot of things that they don't like from him right now to see that. And I just don't understand why they thought this was a good idea from the jump. They should have gave somebody the starting job and put the other guy in the minors. Like you just said, Chris, Brett Beatty has nothing to prove in AAA anymore. We know what's going to happen when he gets sent down. He's going to look like Barry Bonds. We all know that. He's done it year after year. What we don't know is Luis Angel Acuna going to be a major leaguer? And if he's not starting every day, he's not getting developed. And I'm sorry, I'm sick and tired of telling people that development shouldn't be at the major league level when your team's good. I'm sorry. When you're trying to win ball games, development at the major league level is pointless. It doesn't help your team, because if he sucks, and right now our second base is a no-show, your team needs to win ball games. You have high expectations. You can't have a guy trying to figure it out when you're trying to win ball games in a tough National League East. Development is in the majors. We are not the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're not the Cincinnati Reds. We are not the Miami Marlins. I'm sorry. Development is at the minor league level. If you're going to come up, and this is why I blame the Mets more than the player. The Mets should know this by now. This isn't the Mets of 2023. This isn't the Mets of 2017 or 2014 when you're trying to develop guys and you're not a very good team. So you're going to put these guys at the major league level. Development is at the minor league level. Acuna needs to play every day. You're hurting his development by sitting him two days in a row. When you're not going based on matchups, why is Beatty in the lineup? What has he done? He got a hit yesterday, right? Okay, great. But it's not because of matchup. Acuna should be in the game. But again, you sit Beatty after he got his hit after the first week of the season finally, and now you're playing him because of that. But Acuna is sitting on the bench for 2 straight days. Both of these guys start every day in the minors. They play every day. At some point, they have to make a decision. Now, I believe Beatty is a better bench player coming off the bench as a bat than Luis Angel Acuna. I think he loses focus when he's not playing, and coming up in a pinch situation, I don't like it at all. I don't think that's beneficial for him. I don't think he'll be very good. I'm not saying Beatty's going to be great, but I think Beatty has that a little bit more of a presence coming off the bench, because I think he knows his role on this team and in this organization at this point. Luis Angel Acuna believes he should be starting at second base every single day. I think we all agree. But the Mets don't see that, and they see him every day. So there's something they know that we all don't still. And that's why Brett Beatty is still getting these opportunities here. And I would not be shocked if Jeff McNeil comes back and Luis Angel Acuna is back at AAA getting everyday at-bats.
Yeah, again, it's going to be very tough. I'm in agreement with you. I'm kind of skeptical about it, but I can't disagree with you in terms of the pinch hit situation, if you were to keep a bench bat on your team between Acuna and Beatty right now, yes, potentially I'd lean with, going towards Brett Beatty versus Acuna. That's not a knock on Acuna. I do think that Acuna provides the Mets all around better production in every facet of the game than Brett Beatty. But I think that if you're strictly limiting both of those players, one, if you're limiting both of those players or trying to, then you're going to limit Brett Beatty. I would rather them limit Brett Beatty than limit Luis Angel Acuna. I think
Agreed.
that's what it comes down to.
Correct.
If you're limiting, like if you have the necessity of limiting both of these players and you have to choose one to limit and one to go ahead and grow and succeed and try to develop, you're going to clearly limit Brett Beatty over Luis Angel Acuna. So I think that's what we're both in agreement on, and
Agreed.
therefore I agree with you.
100%. Like Bate, when McNeil comes back, if all likelihood, if McNeil never got hurt, Brett Beatty would have been on the bench on this roster. So that role is already determined for Brett Beatty. Luis Angel Acuna, there is no role right now. He should be starting every day. Like, it doesn't make sense. That's why I said I did not like them putting a guy on the roster that you're still trying to develop and figure out what he's going to be. I just don't understand giving him 15 at-bats with Brady's 15 at-bats over 8 games and expect anyone to develop or get hot. Because, again, I really would like to see somebody get hot with the bat. And what would Mendoza do? If Beatty starts hitting, you think Acuna is going to come into the game? I don't think so. Brett Beatty's going to be in the lineup. And who do you think that hurts? That hurts Luis Angel Acuna. So I don't like it. Again, it's nitpicking because it is still something that should be a discussion because second base is a no-show right now. Everybody wants to talk about the bottom of the order. Well, we're talking about the bottom of the order. The bottom of the order has our second baseman, regardless of who it is, Beatty or Acuna. They're not doing anything. Yeah. And they're not doing anything. So
I have a question for you. Where do you think Ronnie Mauricio fits into this equation? Do you think that he's even in this equation for, in the next couple of months or not?
I think they would choose Mauricio over Acuna and Beatty, but I think they need to see health. I don't think the talent's going to be there, but they got to make sure that, he can actually play the position without hurting his knee. You know what I'm saying? Like he can play, he can practice all he wants, but we know game activity can never be, 100% on the line. I'm focusing him on saying, all right, let's see what he can do in game activity. Because I think the minor league coach, I forgot his name, said that they're going to see, he didn't technically say it, but Mauricio's coming back soon to play in minor league games. So I don't think it's going to take long. I think they're going to give him a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And if he looks healthy, they're bringing him up. And they'll probably platoon him. He can play a lot of positions. He can play short. He can play second. He can play third. And that's what Beatty can do. That's what Luis Angel Acuna can do. But I'm sorry. If anybody wants Acuna over Mauricio, you're nuts. Mauricio, I think, is probably the better player. I truly think he is. He has that potential. And I think the Mets know that. Remember, he was going to be a starting third baseman before he got hurt. So I think Mauricio, if he's healthy, he'll be up here in a quick second, in my opinion.
I would hope so. Because I still have a lot of hope for Ronnie Mauricio. I do. And I think just when we're talking about the lapse in offensive prowess, I guess you could say, right? To bring out that word, it's just like Mauricio has the clear ceiling advantage above both Acuna and Beatty with the bat. I mean, it's not even close when you take a look at all fields power, gap to gap power, etc. And Ronnie Mauricio also does possess speed. I mean, it's not as great as Luis Angel Acuna's, but he can also swipe bags for you as well. So yeah, I 100% agree. I really do think that, and I really hope, I don't think, I'm just hoping at this point that if Ronnie Mauricio shows them everything that he needs to show them health-wise and, production-wise, when he starts playing in these games, et cetera, in the minor leagues, if he does well, and they feel like they need his presence on the team, I hope that they don't hesitate to put him on the team because I think that there's no harm, no foul, especially after you've seen the likes of the second base tandem right now producing what they're producing. And a quick side note as well, completely unrelated. Good to see Matt Allen is back. First professional outing in a regular season, 3 strikeouts. Awesome to see. So congrats to him. That was his first since 2019, right? It's been
Yeah,
like 6 years. Crazy,
yeah.
crazy.
Hopefully he stays healthy. I mean, who knows what we're gonna get from? But if he stays healthy, we all knew the stuff that he has. I mean, he was, our top pitching prospect of many years ago. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm gonna tell you this right now. Best case scenario for the Mets is Mauricio is healthy and Mauricio comes on his team and helps his team, because I know this is not very favorable among Mets fans, but that puts another trade asset in the Mets farm system in Luisano Acuna to get what you need at the deadline, whatever that may be. I don't know if it's pitching. I don't know if it's another bat or whatever it might be, another bullpen arm, whatever we need at the deadline. If it's something big, that's another asset that we have in that farm system to use. I know that's not exciting, and that kind of pisses a lot of Met fans off. But at some point, especially if Mauricio's back, you got way too many damn infielders to keep around. It doesn't make sense. You can't keep them around forever. At some point, you got to make a deal that you need to make this team better. You have expectations. There's no excuse not to make a deal like that. So that's just an FYI for everybody, that's a strong possibility, Chris. I know you're a big Acuna fan, but I think you would choose Mauricio over Acuna, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that would. No. I think no. I mean, absolutely, 100%. I mean, Mauricio without that injury, you know, was probably on the trajectory of being in the same situation as what Acuna's in right now. Like he probably would have been the platoon second baseman with Brett Beatty because of Mark Vientos. And honestly, if Brett Beatty or if Mauricio never got hurt, do we see Mark Vientos at third base as the everyday starter at third base for the New
it's a
York
catch
Mets? Like
22. It's definitely a catch
you know what
22.
I'm
Yeah.
it's a catch 22, absolutely. And he would have definitely been the DH, and he would have, definitely proved himself in that aspect. And it's like, whose glove would you rather take, Vientos's or Ronnie Mauricio's? But those guys can both flat out rake. And so, yeah, I think that Ronnie Mauricio has a lot of upside still. And if they're not planning to use him as trade bait, if he shows everything that he needs to show, given the age. He's kind of up there with Brett Beatty in terms of being like, 24, 25 years old. He's kind of graduating from that prospect status. And now we really need to just see what he can produce at the major league level. But I do really quickly before we close things out. And yes, Neymar, also CP, Mets, and the Knicks are playing today. I'm rocking my New York Knicks basketball shirt. Jalen Brunson is making his return after a 15-game absence. So hopefully they're able to take care of business tonight against the Phoenix Suns. But to get this back onto the Mets track, David Peterson, really, really curious, to see him in a little bit of advantageous weather. I want to see how he advantageous in terms of the offense and a pretty good Blue Jays lineup. The balls really aren't flying out of Citi Field. We saw it last night, right? I mean, like, I don't think that home run should be an issue. I hope, again, I'm not going to jinx it, so I'm knocking on wood, but I think that David Peterson could use, and both pitchers really in this ball game could use the weather to their advantage. David Peterson is coming off of a start where he went 6 innings with 9 strikeouts. The put away pitches were there, right?
Yep.
Hopefully the command is locked in, but David Peterson, and that's why I have my live chat poll as such, is he going to go beyond 7 strikeouts? I really think that if he continues to stack these early season great outings or respectable outings, like, we're going to be talking about a situation, and we've said it time and time again, where he could be considered the Mets ace. I know, a little bit far-fetched. I get it. Shamania is still out. We still have to see what he produces, but David Peterson is like that. Like, he's like that. His swing and miss potential, his put away potential with what he throws is awesome. And I'm looking forward to seeing every single time David Peterson is slotted to throw. I'm looking forward to it because we've seen the David Peterson, the ghost of David Peterson's past, right? Like the non-efficient outings, the lack of command. And we've always seen this stuff. And it was just like, when is he ever going to be able to just get on top of it and just kind of just figure it out, just like Tyler McGill?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like he's slowly starting to figure it out. Both of them, really, right? With Tyler McGill throwing pretty decently early in the season as well over the first couple of outings. So, very curious about the David Peterson start. We'll assess it in the post game. But right now, you got to be confident every single time David Peterson takes the mound until further notice.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think David Peterson has the stuff. And again, he talked about that hip being a major issue of it with his mechanics. And he always had the stuff. And if the health and mechanics are working, he has electric stuff and he has put away stuff and ace type stuff. So we will see what we're going to get from David Peterson today on a not very nice day at Citi Field, but a lineup that, is pretty good. So we'll see what he can do here. And hopefully the Mets go for the sweep tonight as Uncuffed Sports Podcast. And that is my boy Hector that I played baseball with in high school. Says, get the brooms out. We are going for the sweep, first sweep of the year, potentially today in about 15 minutes. David Peterson, Francis on the mound. Mets are going for their 4th straight win, and they're ready to get that done today against the Toronto Blue Jays. Guys, enjoy the game today. We'll see you on the post-game show. Let's go Mets, and we'll see you later today, guys. Let's go.
Mets, get a sweep.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball.